So, Tom, there are a bunch of stories in the news. Where would you like to start today?
Well, why don't we start with an unusual place, but a local one, because the Gazette has such a delightful picture of the different mayors.
Yeah.
So the town of Mount Royal, Côte St. Luc, Saint Laurent, the extension to good old Cavendish Boulevard, which, of course, is stalled again. So my old buddy from law school, Dita Burku, is also in that picture, but it was a funny picture, and good on them for being such good sports. But it's a serious matter. I mean, It's basically foot dragging, stalling, incompetence, fill in the blank. So who do you have there? Well, you've got Mayor Brownstein, you've got Alan D'Souza, you've got Mayor Malouf also just saying, what's going on here? Why can't this thing get off the drawing board? And I think that it's just a question of not having your priorities in the right place, because this thing is so overdue, it's not even funny.
Tom, breaking news.
The
Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante, breaking news. I think we'll settle all this. Brian?
We're doing Cavendish for sure.
There you go, Tom. It's a done deal. If the mayor says it's a done deal.
Wasn't that a recording from like 4 years ago?
I played every year.
A couple weeks ago, but still, she said she's going to make it happen. She said the funds have been allocated, which, get a load of this, we just earlier today, we were speaking with Dita Burku, and she hadn't heard that those funds had been set aside and allocated.
Yeah, but don't Tom, don't worry, because...
We're doing Cavendish for sure.
Okay, so
sure.
It's only a matter of
We don't know
time.
when. We don't know when,
Yes.
Tom.
And maybe we'll have the BAP, because they said there was going to be hearings by the Bureau d'Audience Publique en Environnement, the Public Hearing Board on Environment. So none of this stuff has even moved. So, you can understand the frustration of the people who represent all the citizens in those different areas, and good on them for doing it with a wink. But I think that at some point, there's a lot of slips between cup and lip, and right now Valerie Plante has no credibility on this file until she actually says, here's the shovel, here's the ground, let's get this thing going.
The other part of the story, Tom, imagine this actually came to pass, right? And then the first thing the city would do would hold a public consultation. Then we discover that everyone who lives on Cavendish doesn't want this thing in the first place, right? So we'll be talking in 10 years from now, nothing will have changed.
Don't even say it. Don't even say it. Let's talk about this anticipated summer cabinet shuffle. So Anna Gainey's probably going to get a position, right? We are expecting. I kind of wish I could do the shuffle myself, because I'd be like, I'd turf Algabra, I'd turf Mendocino. This will be a fun shuffle.
Oh, you just named the two that are at the top of my list.
Oh, good.
Actually, yeah, I think that Mendocino might be gone from cabinet, because it's been that much of a bad show. I think that probably Omar Algabra will find himself a minor role somewhere in the cabinet. Oh. But he did such a bad job, and there's doing a bad job, and there's doing a really bad job. And when you're doing a really bad job, when you get caught doing the bad job, you blame the public. So people were saying, well, how come 3 of the 10 worst airports in the world are in Canada? And he came up with this amazing thing. He said, well, it's because of the pandemic, Canadians have sort of forgotten how to go through the security procedures, and they forget to take their computers out of their bag. And so there were penalty flags all over the field, just saying, you didn't just say that, did you? Yes, he did. So that's sort of right in a league. You remember when, trying to show that she was close to the average Canadian, Chrystia Freeland said, we've had to cancel our Disney Plus subscription. That was to show that she got people's pain as they were paying, $80 for a few fruits and a bag of cooking oil at the grocery store. Which reminds me that, and it was just in the newscast, that gee whiz, the people responsible for baking half the bread in the country have been convicted of a crime, and are going to be paying a $50 million fine to the Competition Bureau. And the group that bought it, which is this delightful name, I didn't even know until I bought a soccer jersey that said Group Bimbo, so I didn't quite know what that was about, because they sponsor some of the big soccer teams in Mexico. It's the biggest baker in the world that owns it now, and they're really upset. They said they're going to go after the people who sold this to them, because they were not aware that any of this had taken place. So there'll still be a little bit more. In the meantime, the people from Weston had already participated and gotten an agreement not to be prosecuted if they went along. So obviously, they were a source of a lot of the information.
Who knew there was that much money in bread?
Oh, so much bread in bread. Well,
$50 million fine. That's staggering for a Canadian company. It would have been
staggering for a Canadian court, because we're the world masters at the slap on the wrist and go home and don't you start that again. But no, this is actually serious stuff. And the head of the Competition Bureau had a nice reminder. He said, price fixing. You're price fixing the price of bread, and that is a serious criminal offense. It's a serious crime. So just anybody who thought that this was, business as usual, no, this is serious stuff, and this is criminal record stuff. So yeah, it's worthwhile.
All right. I would like to talk about this ridiculous situation about the PQ saying that not a Canadian citizenship ceremony is not enough. We now need a Quebec citizenship ceremony. What are your thoughts on this, Tom?
Well, look at the PQ, which has a grand total of 3 of 125 members of the National Assembly, soon to be 1 after the next election. And one of those 3 people is Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, a likable, affable, easy to get along with person who's moderate and balanced and comes up with smart stuff. And one of them is Joël Arsenault. You hardly ever hear from him. He's from the Magdalens. But the other one is Pascal Bérubé. So it's the quintessential good cop, bad cop. Yeah. They always send Bérubé in to do the bad stuff. So he was out there today musing, how can we have people coming to Quebec and swearing an oath to Canada and saying that they're going to respect the King of England? We can't have that. So we're going to come up with our own ceremony, which is, of course, nonsense and unimportant and irregular, if not outright illegal, and nobody would ever be required to do this thing. But it's a quiet news cycle. You know, the National Assembly's not sitting anymore. The cabinet was at least together, a little while ago. So they're trying to get themselves back into the news, which they just did because we're talking about it. And Pascal Bérubé is a past master at this stuff. He comes up with basically one every other day. He's the guy, for example, who proclaimed that, Michael Sabia, you have to say it sort of with an English accent. Michael Sabia is not Quebec enough, and he couldn't really have the nationalist cred to head Hydro-Quebec. So this is what you deal with the PQ. But I'm getting tired of it. I think it's worth calling it out, that Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon cannot hide behind Pascal Bérubé. Let him become his goon, and then just say, oh, no, I'm that nice, decent guy that you see all the time talking softly. No. This is your guy. You're responsible for the stuff that he spouts, and either you reel him in or you're going to start to wear it.
The other story we should mention, because we found out now there's going to be a protest on this. I think it's coming up tomorrow or the next day. That decision by the housing minister just before they decided to, go on recess, that you can't transfer a lease. And then, of course, that potential for an ethics issue. I understand now there will be an investigation of the housing minister, the provincial minister, by the ethics commissioner. Of course, in Quebec, that doesn't mean anything. It just means there'll be an investigation and nothing will happen. But regardless, this turned out to be a way bigger story, I think, than the government could have ever imagined.
Yes, and Legault continues to get it wrong. He's really tone deaf on this stuff. So yesterday he was out there publicly musing, well, it's because we're getting richer in Quebec, don't you know? So you can't be against us getting richer in Quebec. But as Valérie Plante and some others have said, hold on, we don't want to become like Vancouver and Toronto, where the people who work for you can't afford to live in your city. And I remember speaking with the general manager of a hotel where I used to stay regularly in Vancouver when I was the leader, of the opposition. And he said to me, look, he says, it's a huge problem. The people who work here have to do an hour and a half in, an hour and a half out. They cannot afford anything in Vancouver. He said, it's a huge problem. So Legault always finds a way to boast about the economic side of things without ever thinking of the social or the environmental side, because environment, social issues, and the economy are the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Of course, tone deaf to that completely. July 1st, moving day, front page stories in the French papers and elsewhere. This is a family that's been looking for a place to stay for a year. They've been sub-renting in somebody's basement, stuff like that. This is terrible. Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't we building more housing in Quebec? He uses that as a boast as well. Oh, it's because we've got more money, so people want houses. We build more houses. That's because people have bigger paychecks. So again, Legault always turns this into a way to talk about his government and take credit for the fact that there's a labor shortage and everybody's working and the economy's going okay. But it doesn't answer the fact that there are a lot of people who simply don't have housing, decent housing, and we're not doing anything about it. And Plante, by the way, you think that the Cavendish extension is a one-off? It's not. Plante her heart is definitely in the right place, but she's just incompetent when it comes to getting things done. Where's the Reine de l'Est these days? She managed to pull the plug on that for all sorts of existential reasons, but I don't think it's coming back anytime soon. So, she's a master at complaining about this or that or the other angle, but then nothing gets done. This housing that we talk about, she boasts numbers that are simply not true. The social housing's not getting built. The money is there. And it's Montreal that's been blocking it most of the time.
Yep. Before we run out of time, in fact, we are out of time. So just quickly, Tom, why is Brian Mulroney defending Prime Minister?
Why is he in the news?
I think it's Prime Minister to Prime Minister. or former prime minister to prime minister. But basically, Mulroney had, nobody had anything good to say about him when he left office. But now people remember that he fought Reagan and Thatcher on the issue of apartheid. He took a strong principled stand. He brought in the original free trade deal, and basically he used a couple of examples from the past 8 years where Trudeau's done well. And I think any objective analysis of Canada's handling of the pandemic is going to give top marks to the Liberals. So I think that he's just saying, look, know that history will judge you on the big stuff that you actually accomplished, and forget about the rumors and the backbiting and the pettiness that you meet on a daily basis. And then some people read into that, why isn't he talking about Pierre Poilievre? Because it's irrelevant to talk about Pierre Poilievre. This is a former prime minister talking about how tough it is to be a prime minister because he went through it. So I think it was well-deserved praise, frankly, for Trudeau. I mean, I've had lots to say about the shortcomings of that government. But overall, I think you have to be objective and say, it's a very tough job. And somebody who's been through that grinder, just looking at Trudeau's performance and said, you're going to be proud when history looks back at this stuff 15 or 20 years from now, because Mulroney certainly has a better view on the part of most people than he did at the time he left office.
And I'm sure that's something that Trudeau will use come an election campaign too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Tom, thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.